Hi everyone, welcome back to the garden and Happy New Year. Yes, it's grey and cloudy, but it's 15 degrees here today. It's windy, but we had some blue skies earlier. Fantastic to see. You hear the birds singing, there's still a lot of greenery out here. And today, I'm looking at something that will inject more life and more energy into the garden over the coming months. So let's get on with it. Today's video then, it's all about spring bulbs, bringing an exotic vibe to your garden early in the year when there's not a lot going on. And you might be thinking, isn't it a bit late to be putting bulbs in the ground when some are already poking their heads up above the soil? Yes, it is really. It's a little bit borderline, and generally speaking, you should probably get them in before the end of the year. But as this video was filmed on the last day of December, we just about make that deadline. But I think in reality, it's a great time to buy bulbs. A lot of them are really heavily reduced, and most of the ones that I'm actually going to show you, I got those reduced. It's a great time to go out and buy them and just get them in the ground. And chances are they will flower a little bit later this year, but they'll settle in just fine and come up every spring following it at the right time. So it's certainly not too late to get them in the ground, and it's a good time to get some bargains and add some colour to your garden this spring. So what I want to do is just show you the bulbs that I've chosen and a bit about this area, which I don't think I've shown previously in my videos, or not very much anyway. This is the far end of the garden. Now, the bit here in front of me that I'm looking at now is the fire pit. That bit definitely isn't finished yet, and that's one of my projects for this spring. Not to finish it necessarily, but certainly to get the main structure dug in and get two of my biggest palms planted. But today we're at the far end of the garden that I've been tidying up over Christmas, getting some mulch down and getting it ready for some bulbs. So let's just quickly show you around that now. I'll try and put some bulb planting tips and tricks in this video, as well as show you how I work them into an exotic garden. But firstly, let's just take you off this tripod and show you around the area I'm planting them. So just to show you the area where the bulbs are going, this is it. It's the far end of the garden. That fence might be painted black at some point, but at the minute it's that sort of mouldy red colour. It's staying that way for now. And here, the first thing you'll notice is an apple tree. Not really a staple in an exotic garden as such, but it's one of the few plants that's actually already here when we moved in. We both wanted to keep it. It makes nice apples, and it also brings a certain bit of maturity to the garden. It helps slow down some of those strong westerly winds. They come from that direction in summer and they rip up all the soft leaves. So anything here that brings a bit of structure and some leaves to get in the way of that is definitely appreciated. I've added to that with some shrubs, some bamboos dotted around. They're all young plants and recent divisions, but they'll hopefully fill out nicely. And then you'll notice some small Trachycarpus plants. These Trachycarpus fortunei, the young palms, I've grown from 2-leaf seedlings. I bought a huge batch of them maybe 4 years ago, something like that. And these are the ones that I've grown on that I didn't have a plan for as such in the garden. So what I've done is plant a couple of rows of them. Yes, they're a little bit close to the fence and a little bit close together, but the idea with these is more of an overall look. I want it so when you're looking down the garden, you don't just see a fence, you see a sort of jungly backdrop as though the garden keeps going. There's a couple of cordylines. I grew those in pots for several years. They hardly grow at all. I put them in the ground and they've pretty much tripled in size over a year. So definitely if you've got cordylines, if you've got somewhere long term for them, because they don't really like being moved, get them in the ground, they grow so much faster. Here, just looking at these first, these are the bulbs we're going to put in today, along with an exciting box that will be opening shortly. And you'll notice now 3 eucalyptus trees. So the idea with these is to really create an exotic sort of ambience to the area. I use the word ambience. It's basically, I wanted evergreen trees to help slow that wind down in winter and to help give some protection to the plants that will be going around them. And eucalyptus, whilst they do have a bit of a bad reputation, I think if you've got the space and the right site for them, I think they're a really lovely tree. You've got the scent, you've got these amazing, beautiful sort of silvery blue leaves in winter, and also they do grow quickly. So you can get a garden that evolves very quickly. Here, we've got one that does grow really tall, potentially 30 metres plus tall, but then I've got a smaller variety just over here, Eucalyptus neglecta. I did a video about this last spring. It's got these amazing big leaves, and again, a beautiful scent to it. And here, coming further back, we've got this snow gum, which is a lovely sort of multi-stem plant. Again, it's sized up really nicely. And what we're left with is this big area in the middle here. And in spring, I'll be planting a Trachycarpus forest. Not every single variety of Trachycarpus, but just the ones that will grow the fastest and look the best out here. So I'm excited, looking forward to that. Getting some hybrid palms in, some waggies as well. And I want to get them in sooner rather than later so they can size up before these eucalyptus get too big. because I think probably the crucial part about this end of the garden is that it's really exposed. It's one of the coldest ends of the garden. It sees a lot of wind, and also with it being furthest from the house, it doesn't really get any additional water in, other than maybe a little bit just to help things establish. So everything planted out here needs to be tough, but also it's a great opportunity to get some spring bulbs in. And that's probably my first tip of this video. If you're putting a permanent plant in, it's a great time to bang some bulbs in around it, especially if you're doing it in autumn or winter, because then they're not disturbing the roots, you're not digging roots up just to put them in. I'll be the first to admit that when it comes to tropical style gardening here in the UK, spring bulbs aren't the first plants that come to mind. But the reality is, growing a proper tropical style garden, that most plants don't really start growing, or most plants can't be planted outside until May or June, after the last frosts have passed. And yes, they grow so quickly, but it's still midsummer through to autumn by the time they actually look the best. So that leaves a huge chunk of the year when it's cold, when it's dark, when there isn't a lot going on. So I think spring bulbs are a perfect answer to that. Something that you can put in your garden, not worry about hardiness, not worry about having to give it special care. Some things that will reliably come up every year and bring some colour, something to look at a time of year when there isn't a lot going on. So a couple of tips for bulbs in an exotic garden. Firstly, crocuses. Now they're definitely not exotic, they're one of the most common garden bulbs, but I think they're really great because they come in so many different colours. You can choose bright colours that really bring some exotic energy to your garden. So one thing I tend to do with bulbs is just choose really bright, really bold colours. I don't go for pinks, I don't go for whites, I go for strong colours, yellows, purples, anything that's really rich. And the best thing with these smaller bulbs is not only are they so easy to plant, but also you can plant them in huge drifts as well. So you can really bring patches of colour to your garden. So it's definitely something different to look at, and you can plant them around different plants where it doesn't matter if you're not going to see them in summer because they'll have long finished by then. They're a great way to bring some colour to your garden, like I said, at a time of year when there isn't a lot going on. But if you want some real tropical energy in spring, then Fritillarias, they're the bulb to go for. I've done a video all about growing them, but I think they're one of the most exotic bulbs that you can get and you can grow in your UK garden. They're just absolutely fantastic. They get to about a metre tall. Yes, they've got a definite sort of herbal scent to them. You'll know what I mean if you smell them. But I think they just bring so much energy and so much height to your spring garden. They're absolutely required. I got these spring bulbs from RHS Bridgewater. We had a few days in Manchester between Christmas and New Year. Popped into Bridgewater. It was just a quick visit, but it was amazing just to see how much they've done so far. And it's a garden that even in the depths of winter, there's so much structure there. So many amazing grasses, just so structural, and it really is impressive. So definitely one to check out next year. I've got to say, one thing that really stood out to me was in the Paradise Garden, just how many exotics they got planted out. How many gingers, tetrapanax, everything like that. It's really going to be one to keep an eye on. But anyway, I picked up some of these bulbs because they were just over £1. You can't really go wrong at that price. But onto my main box of bulbs, and these are ones I got from Farmer Gracie. I got them as part of the Black Friday sale, so they had 70 or 75% off. So although they took a couple of weeks to come, I've obviously sat on them for a couple of weeks before I planted them anyway, so that didn't really matter. But I'll just give you an idea of what I've got. So looking through it, I went a little bit crazy with Iris George. They're beautiful iris, and yes, I am that egocentric that bought 100 or something just because it has George in the name, but they are a really lovely flower. And these I'll be spreading around my Mediterranean style area, just pushing them into the soil, and they'll really bring a nice bit of sort of miniature detail, a nice bit of spring interest to that area. We then got Allium Globemaster. I've got a few of those, and I think anything that's a really strong structural bulb, if you stick to odd numbers, especially threes, they look absolutely fantastic. So I had a few of those in the garden this spring. They did really well. So in 2022, we've got even more groups of those added. I think they're a fantastic flower, very structural, and a bit later in the season compared to some of the crocus. So what else have we got? We've got some more little crocus plants. These are orange ones. I think really, again, strong colours, bright, bold colours, you can't go wrong. Digging through it, I just bought so many irises. We've got, let's have a look. This is what I'm looking for. Loads more Fritillarias. They were so cheap there compared to other prices. I bought loads of yellow ones, loads of orange ones, and they definitely got that scent to them. They're a fantastic plant, so let's get some of them in the ground. Firstly, a couple of bulb planting tips I find really help me. Well, I think whilst you can go for a naturalistic look by just chucking everything on the ground, planting it where it falls, yes, it's really random, but you also get a sort of meadow look to the end result. I think it's quite important to sort of separate the bulbs a bit, and I think they give more impact that way. So for example, the Fritillarias that are a large bulb, whilst you can plant them in a totally random spot, I think putting them in a group while still leaving enough space for the individual plant to expand, I think a group of them, it just brings so much more colour and so much more impact. And again, when it comes to the smaller bulbs like the crocus, I like to plant them in drifts. So with those, you can just literally throw them onto the ground and plant them where they fall. But I think it's quite important to keep that sort of group of colour together. You can mix colours obviously, but I really like bold blocks of colour. I think that way the colour is sort of amplified and has so much more impact from a distance. And again, that's another tip. You want to plant bulbs, especially the smaller ones, somewhere where you will appreciate them. So although we're at the back end of the garden here, I'm planting the Fritillarias in quite a central position, so you'll see those as you're coming up through the middle of the garden. And the crocus, yes, each individual bulb is smaller, but the end result, when you see all those flowers nice and close, it'll really stand out as like a sort of shimmering haze of colour. So I'm really looking forward to seeing what that looks like. But a couple of tools that will really help if you're planting bulbs. These ones are nice shiny new because I've just got them from Amazon to replace my old ones. But this here is a bulb planter. I'll put a link to all these tools and some more sort of, we'll say, refined versions in the description below. But this one, if you've not used one before, it's really handy because it saves having to use a spade and dig up a large area of earth just to plant a medium-sized bulb. What you can do, push it into the ground, and as you pull it out, it brings out a core of earth. You then push your bulb into the ground, put it back on top of it, press that trigger, and it releases the core onto it. And then it's just a case of firming the ground down, job done, easy as that. So if you've already got established plants, like here where I've got the palms and the eucalyptus in, if you don't want to destroy the earth too much, use one of those, it really makes the job easier. And for smaller bulbs like the crocus, a dibber is really the way to go. It just makes a hole that's big enough for the bulb, put the bulb in, push the earth over it, job done. Again, it's so much easier than digging a big hole for a small bulb when you just don't need to. So these are the tools that I'll be using. I'll just scatter the bulbs around, get them in the ground, and then it's something to look forward to in spring. One question you might have is how deep do you plant bulbs? And I think really it's an area of gardening like most where there isn't really a strict black and white. But as a general rule, I plant the bulbs to 4 times the depth of the bulb itself. So for a small bulb like a crocus, you just times that by 4 and you get about 100 mil, 4 inches, something like that. Again, just push your dibber down, get the bulb in, put the earth back on top of it, and I'm sure it'll grow for you. When it comes to bigger bulbs like the Fritillaria, they're about that sort of size. Try to go sort of 4 times that, but if you can't get to that depth, anywhere from about 6 inches, 150 mil, up to about 200 mil, 8 inches, again, should be absolutely fine. And I know with Fritillarias, people say about planting them on the side or planting them on grit to improve the drainage, but I think in most gardens, in most soils, as long as it isn't waterlogged all of winter, you shouldn't have any problems with them rotting away. And I sort of think that most bulbs planted on the side will just sort of grow and right themselves around anyway, so it doesn't make too much of a difference. But if you want to know more about Fritillarias, I'll put a link in the description below to a video I did all about growing them. But anyway, enough rambling, let's just get some bulbs in the ground. Just to show you what I've done, I've got the Allium Globemaster there, a little trio next to the tree, a couple of those over there. And here is the main drift of the Fritillaria rubra, which look like that. They're amazing flowers. What I've done is I've tried to plant them in places where I know they won't be disturbed. So here, under the apple tree, I won't be planting anything large there, and anything that I do put in will probably be growing from plugs or seed, so it's not going to disturb the bulbs anyway. Here, I've continued the Fritillaria theme with the Aurora, and at this side over here, I've got Lutea, which is a yellow version. So again, what I've tried to do is not completely random, but not too organised here. I've tried to leave enough room for each bulb to develop, but basically just create a gentle sort of drift to this exotic colour. So they're around the Trachycarpus fortunei, it'll give those plenty of room to grow, and I've still got all this plenty of room here for my bigger Trachycarpuses to go in spring. So I'll get these ones put in, and then I'll basically just scatter the smaller bulbs around. The crocus, the iris, they can go a little bit further back. They can be dotted around in between the Trachycarpus, and that'll be a good day's work. that sun's starting to go down now, so it's time to bring the video to a close. Apologies, it's not been the most exciting video, but I wanted to get something out on the 1st of January. I've really been looking forward to getting these bulbs in the ground, and also, rather than just showing the end result in spring, I thought I'd put a video together showing the sort of thinking behind it. And like a lot of things in the garden, it's a bit of science, leaving the right sort of space between each bulb, giving them the room to develop. It's a bit of art in terms of blocking colours together to really amplify the effect. And like everything, it's a bit of winging it too, putting things in the ground and seeing how they turn out. But I think really, like I said, although it goes against a lot of rules, it's still a great time to go out, buy bulbs at vastly reduced prices and get some in the ground. So let me know in the comments below which bulbs you're growing, and I'll see you in the next video. Thanks for watching.